Christmas Eve greetings to all of you. My name is Jenny Chapelier. I am your worship associate for this service. Whoever you are welcomed here. We invite you to leave worry and stress outside and open your heart to receive the joy, hope, and love of this service. And please join us following the service for fellowship and refreshments on the lanai. Don't forget, there's no Sunday service tomorrow. We will begin with the prelude.
And cheer, fun for all, that children call their favorite time of year. Snowflakes in the air, carols everywhere, olden times and ancient rhymes of love and dreams to share. Sleigh bells in the air, beauty everywhere. Yuletide by the fireside, and joyful memories there. Christmas time is here. We'll be drawing near. Oh, that we could always see such spirit through the year. Sleigh bells in the air, beauty everywhere. Yuletide by the fireside, and joyful memories there. Christmas time is here. We'll be drawing near. Oh, that we could always see such spirit through the year. Oh, that we could always see such spirit through the year. Christmas time, Christmas time is
We welcome this night the birth of a child who became one of the world's great teachers of peace. We welcome this night the return of the undying sun. We welcome this night the rebirth of hope, shining in the promise of each child who comes into this world, and each good intention that comes into our hearts. And so we light our chalice and welcome the light to the world on this holy night.
I love these words by Maureen Killoran. No one is ever really ready for Christmas. If we were ever really all prepared, if every gift we had contemplated had been obtained, if every present was beautifully beribboned, if all the goodies our friends deserve were baked and cooled and stored just so, if each and every person we love was gathered for our celebration, if we never snapped at someone we care about or stopped short of being all that we could be, if our minds were 100% loving and our hearts were 100% generous, then truly we'd be ready. And truly we would not need Christmas quite so much. So come Christmas, most needed of seasons, come with the reminder that love does not depend on perfection, but on willingness to risk connection. Come into the unready manger of our hearts that we might feel the warmth of new life and give flesh to the promise of hope that cries to bring healing into our world. Come Christmas, come love, come hope. Be born into our unready hearts on this silent and holy night. I'm Reverend Amy Petrie Shaw, and I am so glad you are here this evening. It's Christmas Eve, so come and let us worship here together. You have a song sheet that we gave you when you came in, and it's got the words to the songs we'll be singing tonight. We're going to be using the traditional words. Please rise in body or spirit as you are willing, and we're going to start with our gathering hymn, number 235, Deck the Halls. This first story tonight, you've probably never heard. Some of you may have seen it, but most of you probably not. It comes from a book that's been removed from the modern-day Bible, from the infancy Gospel of James. And it's an amazing story. Because the story of Christmas doesn't start with the birth of one amazing baby. It starts in a lot of places, and one of those places is about 14 years before the birth of the baby called Jesus. This is a free retelling, which means I've put it in more modern words, of the infancy gospel of James. A long time ago near Judea, the wealthiest people in town were a couple named Joaquin and Anna. He was in his 60s and she was in her 40s. And they had never had a child, even though they were good people. They went and sacrificed in the temple. They did all the things they were supposed to do. And Joaquin was troubled by this. And without telling his wife what he planned to do, he decided he was going to go out in the desert. And he resolved that he would not eat or drink until God spoke to him. As you can imagine, when she heard what he'd done, Anna mourned that she was a childless widow. Because he was a man of his word. If he said he wouldn't eat or drink until God spoke, he wasn't going to eat or drink. And after a few weeks of her crying and mourning, her servant, who was also a friend, said, "Enough is enough. Enough." He chose to do this. He went out into the desert and he is gone. Put on a pretty dress. The soldiers are all in town at the festival, and go and dance. And so she put on her finest dress, and she headed into town for the festival. And believe it or not, a month later, Joaquin came home. And she met him at the gate. And she told him, "Our prayers have been answered. I'm pregnant." Yeah. Now, he wasn't sure what to do. And so he went to the temple to make a sacrifice. And in those days, if the priest accepted the sacrifice you were offering, it meant that you had been found righteous. So he went to the temple and he took his perfect offering and he told the temple priest what was going on. And the priest said, "I accept your sacrifice." So he came home rejoicing. It is indeed a miracle. I love my wife. The priest has said, we're okay. And they had a baby girl. Today we would say her name is Mary. It was actually Miriam. They protected her from all evil. When she was about 3, they decided they wanted her raised in the temple, which the wealthy often did, was so the children could be taught. When she was 12, she became a woman, and the priest realized this little kid is just perfect. She's wonderful. She's a joy. Every man in town is going to kill each other to marry her. And they weren't sure what to do. They didn't want her to get hurt in the crossfire. They didn't want the men of the town fighting to the death over this 13-year-old little girl. So they had a lottery. And they asked every unmarried man in town, you put your number in. Well, she was won by an elderly widower named Joseph. He was ashamed. He was not sure of what to do. He had 2 grown sons in the house. His wife had died. His sons were both older than his new fiancée. But the priest held firm because he was a good man. They knew he wasn't going to hurt this child that they had to do something with. He took her home. He was a carpenter. He was well known in the region, and he traveled for his work. So a few days later, he left town to go to work. After a month or so, the priest called her back to the temple, and then Mary went to stay with her cousin. And when Joseph returned, he was amazed at a miracle. Mary was 6 months pregnant. He was terrified he'd be blamed for not protecting her. But after speaking to the priests, at last it was decided that it was okay. And they left town to return to Joseph's birthplace for a Roman census. They had almost made it to Bethlehem when she went into labor. Joseph ran for a midwife, but when he returned with the woman, Mary had already given birth and named the child Emmanuel, or God with us. And together with his fiancée and child, Joseph went into Bethlehem, and he stayed for 2 years. Now, 2,000 plus years later, we look at this story with our sophisticated modern eyes, and we see that there were indeed miracles of love that produced not one but 2 children. And for that young girl, her child must have seemed to be the greatest miracle that she could possibly imagine. On Christmas Eve, all funds raised during our offering are given to support the minister's discretionary fund. This is the fund that lets us provide emergency help for people of the congregation when they need it most. Our offering words are offered with levity this morning as always, or this evening as always, because giving should happen with a smile. A young boy had been terrible all year, but he really wanted a new bike more than anything, so he nervously sat down to write a letter to Santa. "Dear Santa," he wrote, "I've been a very good boy." No, he thought, I can't lie to Santa. So he tore the letter up and he started again. "Hey, Santa, I've tried really hard to be a good boy." No, that won't do either. Tore it up. "Okay, Santa, what had happened was..." Despairing, he tore the letter up again, and then an idea hit him. He rushed to the manger scene his father had set up under the tree, and he took the Mary figure and he ran back to his room, and he tucked it carefully in the bottom of his sock drawer. He picked up his pencil and got a clean sheet of paper, squared his shoulders, and wrote, "Dear Jesus, if you ever want to see your mom again..." I'm sorry, Lord. Because Jesus hasn't gotten back to me yet, the morning offering will now be given and received.
I Will Light Candles by Howard Thurman. I will light candles this Christmas, candles of joy despite all sadness, candles of hope where despair keeps watch, candles of courage for fears ever present, candles of peace for tempest-tossed days, candles of grace to ease heavy burdens, candles of love to inspire all my living, candles that will burn all the year long. When the song of the angels is stilled, when the star in the sky is gone, when the kings and princes are home and the shepherds are back with their flock, the work of Christmas begins. To find the lost, to heal the broken, to feed the hungry, to release the prisoner, to rebuild the nations, to bring peace among others, to make music in the heart.
Our words for meditation today are from Come Emmanuel by Godfrey Rush. Come, Emmanuel, God with us to be. Come down from paradise and occupy this dirty stable of humanity. Come and live rough as we do. Come and die. Come and be lonely as an orphan child. Come to where grief is harvested and stored. Come to where aged minds run wild. Come to the hospice and the cancer ward. Come flee from tyrants as a refugee. Come be betrayed by those you counted friends. Come and be tortured with no amnesty. Come as the means to justify all ends. Come and be completely human. Then we'll know your sorrow may bring hope of lasting joy. And God above is God with us below. Holding those words in mind, please join me in 1 minute of silence.
The Epiphany by Godfrey Rush. A stable's a good place for revelations. Some of the most profound discoveries are made in back rooms, half by accident, by people half exhausted, looking for something else. Just as we felt like giving up, when the whole thing had become ridiculous and had gone on much too long, and we were blaming everyone else for our mistakes, we came upon the unexpected answer in the most unlikely place. A speechless, thoughtless, helpless child who just lay there needing to be loved. In this defiance of all natural things was born the enabling power of sacrifice, a being whose ambition was to seek its own destruction and then call upon his followers to do nothing else. What kind of a way was this to rule a world? He just lay there, needing to be loved. It would be stopped. Each Herod would conspire for its destruction when they cannot tempt it with possessions, nor subdue it with pain, nor lull it to sleep with alcohol or television. Here was something we could not buy or cure. Digitize, transplant, promote, update, invest in, analyze, or write a business plan for. He had no army, textbook, voter's mandate, or computer markup language with which to implement this great design. He just lay there, needing to be loved. It was the most implausible demand. Anything else we might negotiate, but not this secret life secured through death. Grace born out of deprivation, grace born of the endurance of the oppressed, grace born of the hardships of the poor, grace born of the forgiveness of the intolerable, grace born in the dignity of silence, grace born from incomprehensible submission to the absolute abuse of power. In the strength of his weakness, he just lay there, needing to be loved. Eons after energy exploded into matter, here in this stable was let loose a yet more potent power, shedding the fabric of his former life like an old coat, reckless that the truth would prove, for all he knew, fatal to everything to which he had thus far clung. Our gifts were tokens. There was nothing more to do but leave the child to his own terrible story and return by different routes to our own countries, strangers to us now, yet seeing them as if for the first time, how they just lie there, needing to be loved. Please rise in body or spirit. Our centering hymn today is number 253, O Come All Ye Faithful, and the traditional words are on your song sheet.
Amen.
The Stolen Infant by Carl Scoville. Having a child changes things. A favorite Christmas story is by UU minister Carl Scoville as he talks about the heating wars in his house, which at the time was the parsonage of King's Chapel at 63 Beacon Street in Boston. Scoville writes, I like to think that after 25 years of living together, our family has developed a certain sense of equilibrium, a certain ease with each other. From time to time, of course, differences arise, and sometimes, momentarily, an act of outright rebellion. But as the reigning benevolent master of 63 Beacon Street, as I sometimes fancy myself, I like to think that by and large we get along very well. There are differences, as I said, continuing differences, such as just how warm the house should be. I grew up in a house without central heating, and I have always felt that a cool house is a healthy house, impervious to colds and conducive to flow of blood. My daughters do not share that sentiment, and at times become articulate about the point. Last Christmas, when I refused to turn up the heat sufficiently high to raise a winter's supply of orchids, the youngest daughter proclaimed, "Behold, a decree went out of Carl Augustus that all the world shall be frozen." And each went to her own room to be frozen. Nonsense, I said. You're much better off here than if you were living in China or Russia. I don't recall her precise response, but she intimated that my argument was moot. Something in her tone of voice suggested that the matter was not settled. That Christmas Eve, we held our traditional services of song and scripture, and we added a small new feature. On the old communion table, we placed a creche, terracotta figures of Mary, Joseph, the babe, shepherds, sheep, and kings as well. We had never had a creche in King's Chapel before, and I felt that if we were to introduce one, the muted colors of these terracotta figures might alleviate any Puritan objections. We went through the family service at 4:30, and the Holy Communion at 6, and the big service at 10:30, and I heard nothing but words of appreciation. I was relieved and thought perhaps we'd started a new tradition. I had finished greeting the crowd after the late service when our sexton approached me with a worried look and said, "I think you'd better come down to the front of the church." "Why? What's the matter, Tom?" I asked. "One of the pieces of the creche has been stolen," he said to me. "Which one?" I asked. "Well, it's Jesus," he answered. Oh, Lord, I thought, the first time we put it out and someone takes a piece. I hope this doesn't mess things up for the next 300 years. As we walked down the aisle of the church, I couldn't help wondering who would take such a piece? A drunk? A nut? An objector? A prankster? We got to the chancel and looked at the creche, and sure as shooting, the baby was gone. I looked under the table and around the chancel floor. Nothing. Then I saw that someone had placed a piece of paper under the figure of Mary. I drew it out and found the following message, printed neatly in pencil. We've got Jesus. Turn up the heat at 63 Beacon Street, and we'll return him for the morning service. The heat went up at the parsonage. The infant reappeared, and everything returned to normal. Well, not quite. The benevolent master of 63 Beacon Street sits less certainly upon his throne. That is not surprising. No monarch, indeed, no master, can ever be so sure of his rule after a child has been born. Everything does change after a child is born, and sometimes those changes can be greater than anything we ever imagined. A little over 2,000 years ago, the stories say, a child was born, and his birth changed the world. It all began with a census ordered by Rome.
I've got one last story for you tonight as you prepare to go back out into the hectic world and get ready for tomorrow and this evening. It's a story of that census ordered by Rome and what happened next. Some people call this the greatest story ever told. Others say it's just a story about a scared, brown-skinned family finding love and community among strangers in a foreign place. In this time and in this place, it's a story we need to hold in our hearts because it's a story about love. It's a story about love made real. And our world needs all of the love and all of the joy and all of the acceptance and all of the compassion that we can find for one another. Now, in those days, an order was published by Caesar Augustus that the whole world should be registered. This was in the first registration taken when Quirinius was governor of Syria. So all the people went to their hometowns to be registered. And Joseph, too, went up from the city of Nazareth in Galilee, where he was living, to Judea, to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was a descendant of the household and the family of David. He went there to be registered with Mary, who had been promised to him in marriage and who was pregnant. While they were there, the time came for her to have her baby, and she gave birth to her first child, a son. She wrapped him in strips of cloth, and she laid him in a feeding trough because there was no place for them up above in the guest quarters. In that region, there were shepherds living in the fields and watching their flocks all through the night. And an angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. And then the angel told them, "Stop being afraid. Listen, I'm bringing you good news of great joy for all people. Today your Savior, the Lord Messiah, was born in the city of David, and this will be a sign for you. You'll find the baby wrapped in strips of cloth and lying in a feeding trough." Can you imagine that if you were poor? You're out in that field, you're dirty, you're scared, and somebody from your God shows up and doesn't yell at you, doesn't tell you you're not good enough or you haven't brought the best sacrifice, but tells you there's a sign for you, and it's a baby. It's not a warrior. It's not a king. He doesn't have a sword. He doesn't come with gold. He's not here to make you rich or famous. He doesn't want your burnt offerings. He's lying in a feeding trough. And suddenly there were a multitude of the heavenly army with the angel praising God by saying, "Glory to God in the highest, peace on earth to people who enjoy his favor." And when the angels had left them and gone back to Hebron, the shepherds told one another, "Let's go to Bethlehem. Let's see what's taken place that the Lord told us about." And they went and found Mary and Joseph with the baby. The baby was lying in a feeding trough. And when they saw this, they repeated to them what they'd been told about this child, and all who heard were amazed at what the shepherds said. Mary continued to treasure all these things in her heart and to ponder them. And then the shepherds returned to their flock, glorifying and praising everything they had heard and seen just as it had been told to them. They went back to being shepherds, but they carried the miracle into the world, just like we will when we leave here tonight.
The chalice has been extinguished, but we carry the light of the miracle into the world. Please remain seated and help us sing hymn number 251, Silent Night, Holy Night. We are going to start lighting the candles now. And once your candle is lit, please lean over. Don't lean your candle over, it will drip wax. Lean your body over and light the candle of the person next to you. When the song is over, we'll have a moment of silence.
On this night, illuminated by a story and a star, we witness a miracle, a birth heralding our birth, pregnant with promise and oh so surpassingly strange, a life no less magical than ours, a death to charge our day with purpose, helping us to live in a way that our lives too will prove worth dying for. Joy to the world on this holy night. Peace, ashe, and may it be so. Merry Christmas and happy holidays to everyone. I ask that you please rise in body or spirit, blow out your candles, and help to sing us all out into the world with "We Wish You a Merry Christmas." Wish you a Merry Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas, wish you a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. The tidings we bring to you and your kin, we wish you for Christmas and a Happy New Year. Wish you a Merry Christmas. Wish you a Merry Christmas, wish you a Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year. Merry Christmas, everybody. There are goodies out on the lanai.